What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you for watching. Today's video has been a very long time in the making. This is something I've wanted since long before I even started this YouTube channel. And today we finally got it. So if you watch the channel, I'm sure you know we have a ton of videos on this little guy, the 5.7 by 28. It's one of my favorite handgun calibers to shoot. Super low recoil, high velocity, flat trajectory. There's a lot to like about this little round. Well, a couple years ago, really out of protest on the insane price tag of the FN57, I went ahead and grabbed one of these. This is the Ruger 5.7 pistol, and I actually like this thing quite a bit. But of course, there was always that little voice in the back of my head telling me that I need to try the real thing. And luckily, I've got friends that also spend entirely too much money on this hobby, and thanks to one of them, today we finally have the real FN57 pistol. Now, there are several different variants of these pistols. Obviously, this one is FDE. I believe, just by looking at it, it's probably a generation or two old. I've seen newer ones with like optics plates, different slides and stuff like that. But the internals and just the overall function of the pistol should be about the same. So, like I said, we've done quite a few videos with this caliber, the Ruger 5.7, the FN PS90 and stuff like that. But this is the very first time we've ever had the OG FN57 pistol, and I'm very excited to finally shoot this thing. All right, guys, very first shots with the FN57. We got a full magazine here, and before I even shoot this thing, I can say it's probably the lightest full-size pistol I've ever held in my life. So we'll see how it feels. By the way, my hands and face are completely frozen, so if I miss my targets, that's my excuse. Let's shoot it. Feels good. The trigger's a little bit weird. It kind of reminds me of a Glock trigger, to be honest. I'll hit that little green. Feels like we're going forever. There we go. All right, we finally got to the end of that magazine, and as you can see, it ran flawlessly. By the way, just the ammo in that one magazine was like $20 or $25, so please hit the like button for me. We're gonna need all the views we can get on this one. Not a cheap caliber to shoot. So my first impressions, it feels good. Obviously the 5.7 doesn't have a lot of recoil, so this pistol does not either, but I do think it kicks a little bit more than my Ruger 5.7, I assume because it weighs almost nothing. I'm not even kidding. With a fully loaded magazine, this pistol is still lighter than like an empty Glock 19. It's just such a lightweight gun. It almost feels like an airsoft pistol. Trigger's okay, not great, not terrible. And yeah, it feels like a plastic striker-fired pistol. Let's shoot it again. Okay, I went ahead and switched gloves. My fingers were absolutely frozen in those other ones. So we got another magazine. I think there's 11 rounds in here. It was just whatever was left in that box. So let's shoot it again. See if it can knock down the clay popper target. Nope. So that kind of shows you right there how lightweight the 5.7 is. It hit that pink target and didn't even knock it over. I think it's shooting a little bit to the right. I noticed the bullet impact on that pink target was a couple inches right. I think I missed some other targets as well, but one thing to consider, which I'm noticing right now, is the 5.7 is extremely loud compared to like a 9mm or something. It's obviously a high pressure bottleneck cartridge with a lot of velocity behind it, so it's definitely gonna be loud if you're using it for home defense or something like that. Just something to consider. I do like it, I'll be honest. Obviously no malfunctions or nothing like that. FN is kind of known for making pretty high quality stuff, so that's probably why they can charge $1,400 for a plastic gun like this. But other than that, it feels about like I expected. All right, now for the comparison that I know all my fellow poors are gonna wanna see, the Ruger 57. So these two pistols are on opposite ends of the price spectrum. I got this a few years ago for, I think, around 700 bucks. I actually bought it in protest of the astronomical price of the FN. And then I ended up just liking the pistol quite a bit. So let's shoot them both and we'll discuss the differences. Ruger 57. Okay, the trigger's a lot lighter. That almost surprised me. Okay, and back to the FN. Failure to feed, that's interesting. All right, could have been my gloves. I'm not gonna blame that malfunction on the gun. It is really weird shooting with these big, thick gloves on because I feel like my hands are kind of getting in the way of the slide and some of the controls. So we'll blame that one on me. All right, so there's definitely some differences to talk about. The first one I noticed just picking up the pistols is the weight. The FN does feel significantly lighter weight than the Ruger. Obviously the Ruger does have an all metal slide, the FN does not. It's got that dual layer, thin metal wrapped in plastic. That's probably where they save a lot of the weight. I'll be honest, the FN feels like an airsoft gun. It's one of the weirdest feeling handguns I've ever held in that regard. I was surprised at the recoil. There was not as much of a difference as I expected. I do think the Ruger is slightly softer shooting, but I thought the FN would be quite a bit snappier considering how lightweight it is. They're pretty dang similar, honestly. Another difference I noticed is the grip. I think the FN has a slightly shorter grip because my pinky kind of hangs off the base plate on this one, whereas the Ruger feels smaller in diameter. I can definitely get more of my hand around this one, pause. And the 5.7 in general is a long handgun round, so the grips are always gonna be kind of big from front to back. Don't know if you can see the difference, but you can definitely feel it. Now, obviously looks are subjective. You can see both of these pistols and decide for yourself which one you think looks better. They're both pretty good looking guns, if we're being honest. The controls on the FN are far superior to the Ruger, in my opinion. The slide release, safety, the magazine release specifically is just much bigger and easier to access. And I just think overall the FN has the better, more tactile controls than the Ruger. And that brings us to the biggest difference, the price. So when I got the Ruger, it was around 700 bucks, and I believe the FN 5.7 is usually between like 11 and 1500. So we'll just say it's twice the price. This is 700 bucks, this is 1400 bucks, and the big question is it worth it? It depends. I've kind of learned that money is subjective. What's worth it for one person might not be worth it to somebody else. And it all just depends how much money you have, how much you're willing to spend, how bad do you want the FN 5.7. If you want the OG, the original 5.7 pistol, and you like it for the cool factor, then yeah, I would say obviously it's worth it. If you just want something that will shoot the same caliber, do the same thing, and cost half the price, then I would say there is absolutely nothing wrong with the Ruger. In fact, I prefer the Ruger in many ways. So that's my opinion on that. It doesn't really help you guys, but money's subjective, man. I don't know what else to say. You know, what's worth it for one person might not be worth it for somebody else. So do with that information what you will. And one more thing I forgot to mention that really surprised me is the FN 5.7 has a magazine disconnect. So we have a magazine in the pistol. If I pull the trigger, you can hear that click. If I take the magazine out, rack the slide, the trigger becomes dead. It will not fire unless the magazine is in the pistol. Put it back in, and the trigger breaks. And just for a comparison, the Ruger 5.7 does not have that. You can see there's no magazine in the pistol. Pull the trigger, it will fire. Reset, fire. Now maybe they've changed that in other versions of the FN 5.7. It could just be this one, but that is a feature that I absolutely despise. And some of you might be wondering, why do you want your pistol to fire with no magazine in it? There's a couple reasons. Number one, in a fight for your life, hand-to-hand combat happens, and someone could grab your gun, bump the magazine release, steal your magazine, something like that. I want that one round in the chamber to still fire if I need it. Also, I've shown on this channel many times how when you're firing a pistol, you can accidentally hit the magazine release and drop the magazine out of the gun, or at least dislodge it enough to trip that magazine disconnect. In my opinion, it's just another one of them safety features that doesn't make anything safer and probably causes more harm than good. So, not a fan. Now, since today's video is with the FN 5.7, one thing we have to discuss is the legendary 40 grain blue tip. So we've had these on the channel 1,000 times. They've been around for years, but recently I've noticed a huge increase in media popularity. Specifically in like 9 out of 10 rap songs I hear, they mention the FN with blue tips. So the blue tip 5.7 is a 40 grain ballistic tip hollow point, which means in theory it should penetrate hard targets like a full metal jacket and then expand in soft targets like a hollow point. Again, it is only 40 grains, so very lightweight like all 5.7 ammo, which means it's not gonna penetrate as far or retain as much energy as something like a 9mm would. But it is higher velocity, flatter shooting, etc. So there's pros, there's cons, like everything. Let's shoot a couple targets and see how effective they are. Okay, first up we have a coconut on the table. It's a very small target, but I like shooting these because they're kind of hard, like bone. So I want to see how the blue tip 5.7 penetrates through one of these. Let's put one in his coconut. That wasn't bad. All right, well, I would say it definitely went all the way through. I wasn't sure if it would just go through one side and stop in the middle. It looks like the majority of that definitely penetrated all the way through. We do have some fragments in there though. Don't know if you can see those. This coconut is like frozen solid, but either way, a couple bullet fragments in there. The majority of it looks like it passed all the way through. To be honest, that was one of the cooler coconuts we've ever shot. It was probably just shot placement, but that definitely was not a bad result. I actually got another coconut. Let's go ahead and mag dump it at close range. Okay. I guess I don't need the other rounds. All right guys, ballistic shell time. We got two 16-inch blocks on the table. I would say this test is the best way to show us how effective these rounds really are. Blue tip 5.7, we'll shoot this one first, then we'll try a couple others to compare. Let's see what it does. Dead center hit right in the middle of the gel block. Hopefully you can see that blue tip that came off probably 2 inches into the ballistic shell. If we go over here, you can get a better look at it. Decent wound cavity, not incredible. The bullet pretty much stayed intact until about, I would say, 8 inches into the gel block. We have the copper jacket right there, and then the majority of the lead right there. If we zoom out, you can see how far it penetrated. These are 16-inch blocks. I would say that is probably 11 or 12 inches at the most. So as you can see, it's kind of right on that line of not enough penetration and just barely enough penetration. The FBI recommends 12 to 18 inches and 10% gel, and this got probably 11 or 12. So I would feel comfortable using it, but would it be my first choice? Probably not. Is my face frozen? Absolutely. All right, the blue tip did its thing, not bad performance. Next up, we have the 27 grain green tip 5.7. Now this is actually most people's favorite round that use this caliber for real. For some reason, it doesn't get as much love in the streets. So let's see if we can change that. I'm gonna try to put it a little bit away from the first one, maybe higher up. I hope that stopped in the ballistic shell. And it did not stop in the ballistic shell, which is what I was afraid of. You can see where it went in right there, a little bit to the left of our blue tip. And if you look over here, you can see why people love that round. So the wound cavity from the 40 grain blue tip is right there. It's a little bit dirtier. The green tip is back there behind it, and it's at least 3 times the size. Just a massive wound cavity for a 5.7 bullet. About, I don't know, 10 inches into the gel. It basically took a 90-degree turn up and to the left, and it looks like it exited our gel block right there. Even at the point that it exited the gel block, it had already got as much penetration as the blue tip. You can see where that lead is right there and the exit hole is back there. They're both right around that 12-inch mark. So that is why people love the green tip 5.7. It got just as much penetration as the blue tip, probably would have got more if it didn't curve and exit out the gel. And as you saw, the wound cavity was at least 3 times the size. So lighter weight bullet, going quite a bit faster, dumps more energy, and gets more penetration. Just all the way around a superior bullet. All right, we just tested the two most popular 5.7s, the 40 grain blue tip and the 27 grain green tip. I think they both did really well, actually. But I do think there are better calibers for a self-defense handgun. Just for a comparison, we are gonna try a 9mm. This is the 124 grain Hornady XTP, and we're shooting it out of my Glock 19. I've never tested this round before, so we'll see how it does. There's not a ton of room, but I'm gonna try to put it to the right of that first 5.7 that we shot. Let's see if it stayed in the gel. And the 9mm went in right there on the right side of the ballistic shell block. If we go over here, you can see the difference. Actually, I would say the green tip 5.7 still has a larger wound cavity in terms of diameter. I'm sure the slow-mo will show you the energy difference from the 9mm on impact. It's just a bigger, more powerful round. And as you can see, it got probably 14 or 15 inches of penetration into the ballistic shell. Just blew right by the 40 grain 5.7. Also, if you look at that bullet fully expanded, you can see it's at least 3 or 4 times the size of the little 5.7 that we got back here. So bigger bullet, more energy on target, more penetration. The 9mm is just all around a superior caliber in my opinion. But the 5.7 definitely has its advantages, and I would consider it more of a niche specialty round. People that use it know why they need it, and it does work very well for certain things. But as a general purpose self-defense caliber, I like the 9mm over the 5.7. All right, guys, well, the weather has decided to show up and throw a wrench in our party here. So before we go, I've got one more test that I want to do. And I would say probably the main selling point of the 5.7 is how it performs against bulletproof vests. So on the table, I've got a level 3A body armor panel. This is brand new, never been shot. And then behind it, we've got a little watermelon that's almost certainly frozen solid at this point. So this body armor is level 3A, which means it's rated for handguns up to a 44 Magnum. But the 5.7 is a unique handgun caliber in that it's one of the very few that actually has the velocity to defeat this stuff. So let's see what happens. Now, there's only one 5.7 that has the velocity to consistently defeat this stuff, and that is the 27 grain green tip SS198. It's an all metal bullet, and it's obviously extremely lightweight. So it's going quite a bit faster than the 40 grain blue tip. Let's see if it gets through. Oh yeah. I think it did. Well, there's really no mystery there. You can clearly see where that bullet punched all the way through the body armor and even pulled some of the Kevlar through right there. And then we do have a hole on our watermelon right there. It is definitely frozen. Oh wow, we actually have an exit hole on the back of the watermelon too. I did not expect that. I thought it would stop that bullet just because of how frozen this thing is, but it did not. It's kind of crazy to think this tiny little handgun round can punch right through something that will consistently stop a 44 Magnum. But speed kills armor, and the 5.7 is a fast little sucker. All right, guys, there it is. I hope y'all enjoyed our video on the FN 5.7 pistol. It's been a long time coming. Like I said, this is a pistol I've wanted for years, literally since I first seen them, probably 10 or 15 years ago. And out of protest for the insane price tag, I've just never got one. Luckily, I have friends that are equally as obsessed with buying stupid things as I am. So shout out to my buddy for letting me borrow his. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I have no complaints. It's a cool gun. It feels weird, I'm not gonna lie. It takes a while to get used to because there's just so much plastic. It's so lightweight. It honestly feels like airsoft guns that I have. So that's kind of weird, but as far as the function, actually shooting the thing and how it feels and functions and everything like that, I have no complaints. That being said, I still think they're way overpriced for what they are, and one of the cheaper options out there, like a Ruger 5.7, would serve you just fine for literally half the price. So do with that information what you will. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know down in the comments below. As always, hit the like button for me, guys. I would really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.